Hey everyone, tonight, we're stepping into the smoke-filled halls, shadowy towers, and candlelit chambers of the Middle Ages, where history wasn't just written in chronicles, but whispered in taverns, prayed over and etched into the bones of the unlucky. This is the world of medieval mysteries, vanishing princes, cursed tombs, secret manuscripts, and weapons of fire that burned even across water. Some of these stories are terrifying, others absurd, and a few are so strange you'll think they were dreamed up by a medieval playwright after too much ale. Before we dive in, take a quick second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy these late-night wanderings through history's weirdest corners. And drop a comment to let me know where you're tuning in from, and what time it is on your clock right now. I love seeing this little community stretch across continents, all of us sinking into the same stories together, no matter the hour. So, dim the lights, maybe curl up with a blanket, or let a fan hum in the background, and prepare to travel back nearly 1,000 years. Tonight's journey begins not in a battlefield or a royal court, but deep in a forest. The year is 1100. The king is William II of England, known for his fiery temper, ruddy face, and a sense of humor that could start a war, and he's about to ride out on what should have been an ordinary hunt. Instead, it became one of England's longest whispered mysteries: a sudden death, an arrow in the chest, and a brother who wasted no time racing for the throne. The mysterious death of King William II 1100. It was a warm August afternoon in the year 1100 when King William II of England, known as William Rufus for his ruddy complexion, rode into the tangled thickets of the New Forest. His bow was strung, his spirits high. Hunting was his favorite pastime, though it carried its share of danger. His own brother Richard had died in the very same forest years earlier, struck down not by enemy steel but by a low branch. Locals whispered that the Anglo-Saxons, dispossessed by William the Conqueror, had cursed these woods. The king, however, laughed at such superstitions. That day he was joined by his younger brother Henry and a retinue of knights, among them Sir Walter Tyrrell. The hunt began, hounds barking, hooves pounding. The king and Tyrrell found themselves separated from the rest of the party. A stag darted through the trees, golden light streaming through the canopy. William loosed an arrow that grazed the beast but did not fell it. He turned to Tyrrell. "Shoot," he shouted. Tyrrell's arrow flew, but instead of striking the deer, it struck the king square in the chest. William staggered, tried to snap the shaft, then collapsed, bleeding out in the forest floor's moss. He died within moments. Tyrrell panicked, mounted his horse, and fled. None of the hunting party stayed with the king's body. Instead, peasants later discovered the corpse and carried it by cart to Winchester Cathedral. The once mighty monarch was buried hastily under a plain slab, without the grandeur due a king. The suddenness of the death and the haste of the burial immediately fueled suspicions. Why had no one cared for the body? Why did his younger brother Henry waste no time, racing instead to seize the treasury and the throne? Within 3 days, Henry was crowned king, taking precedence over his elder brother Robert, still returning from crusade. The speed was breathtaking, the convenience uncanny. Was William's death an accident of the hunt, or was it a carefully planned assassination? Sir Walter Tyrrell, curiously, was never punished. Henry allowed his estates to remain untouched, passing smoothly to his heirs. Was this clemency or silence bought at a price? Tyrrell himself swore years later he was innocent, that another arrow had struck the king. Chroniclers of the age did not dare accuse Henry directly, but the whispers never faded. To this day, historians remain divided. Hunting accidents were common, but Henry's swift seizure of the crown is hard to ignore. The arrow that felled William Rufus left behind not only a dead king but a mystery that has haunted English history for nearly a millennium. The disappearance of Arthur of Brittany, 1203. Arthur of Brittany was only 15 when he vanished without a trace. Born in 1187, he was the posthumous son of Geoffrey making him nephew to both Richard the Lionheart and King John. By the laws of primogeniture, Arthur had a stronger claim to the throne than John. Richard himself had once acknowledged Arthur as heir, but power in the medieval world belonged not to the rightful, but to the ruthless. In 1199, Richard died, and John seized the English crown. On the continent, however, Arthur was supported by King Philip II of France and many nobles who resisted Norman control. By 1202, war erupted. Arthur, now a teenager, boldly besieged his own grandmother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, at a castle in Poitou. John struck back with rare cunning, capturing Arthur and many of his allies. The boy was imprisoned at Falaise, then moved to Rouen. Chroniclers record a chilling detail. John ordered his jailer to blind and castrate Arthur, but the knight refused. Rumors spread that John intended to kill his nephew outright. By April 1203, Arthur was gone. No body was displayed, no funeral held. Silence enveloped the matter. Stories multiplied. Some said John himself, drunk and enraged, struck Arthur down and hurled his body into the Seine. Others accused William de Braose, Arthur's jailer, who was richly rewarded after the boy disappeared. Still others whispered that Arthur attempted escape and fell to his death. Whatever the truth, the absence of the young duke was enough. France erupted in anger. Philip II seized on the outrage, stripping John of Normandy and much of his continental holdings. The disappearance of Arthur of Brittany was more than a family tragedy. It altered the course of Anglo-French politics. The fate of the boy remains uncertain, but his shadow loomed so large that it helped brand John as one of England's most hated kings. The Anglo-Saxon New England in the Black Sea. The Norman conquest of 1066 shattered Anglo-Saxon England. Some nobles resisted, others fled. A remarkable tale tells of those exiles who journeyed eastward, forming a new homeland in distant lands. Sources like the Chronicon Universale and the Icelandic Jatvar Eyjar saga speak of a fleet of 350 ships, commanded by Earl Siward of Gloucester, leaving England behind. On their voyage they raided Iberian coasts and even seized North African ports before arriving in Byzantine waters. At Constantinople, they aided the emperor by breaking a naval blockade. In gratitude, Emperor Alexios I Komnenos offered them land. Rather than stay in the capital, they longed for their own realm. They sailed across the Black Sea and conquered territory along its northern coast. There, they named towns after those they had lost: London, York, and others. Later maps from Genoese and Catalan cartographers marked places called Londin. Suzaku named suspiciously, close to London and Saxon. Even friars travelling in the 13th century reported meeting Christian people they called Saxi in Crimea. Could these be the descendants of Anglo-Saxons, transplanted far from their native isle? The evidence is tantalizing but inconclusive. Was there truly a New England in the East, a lost colony of exiled Englishmen clinging to their culture? Or is it legend woven from fragments of fact? The story reminds us that history often hides in the spaces between what is recorded and what is imagined. Gilles de Rais from hero to monster. Gilles de Rais was once hailed as a hero of France, a companion in arms of Joan of Arc, a marshal of the kingdom. Born to wealth and power, he fought valiantly during the 100 Years' War, helping to lift the siege of Orleans. He was celebrated, honored, and wealthy beyond measure. But behind the splendor lurked darkness. In his castles, rumors began to spread. Children were disappearing. Servants whispered of ghastly deeds. Gilles, it was said, had turned to alchemy and the occult, seeking wealth through demonic pacts. Whether in pursuit of power or perverse pleasure, he lured peasant boys and, sometimes girls, into his halls. By 1440, accusations could no longer be ignored. Gilles was arrested, tried before both secular and ecclesiastical courts. The testimony was harrowing. Witnesses described servants disposing of small bodies. Gilles himself, under threat of torture, confessed to atrocities almost beyond belief. The number of victims was claimed to be over 140. On October 25, 1440, Gilles de Rais was condemned. The following day he was hanged and burned before a crowd. Once a national hero, he died a criminal of the vilest sort. In later centuries, revisionists suggested he was framed by rivals coveting his lands, but the sheer weight of testimony, the silence of his once powerful allies, and his own confession suggests the horror was real. Gilles de Rais remains a chilling reminder that monsters can hide behind noble titles. The Erfurt latrine. Disaster 1184. In the summer of 1184, nobles gathered in the German city of Erfurt to resolve a bitter feud. King Henry VI presided, flanked by bishops and lords. The assembly was crowded into an upper hall of a church. The beams strained under the weight of armored men. Without warning, the floor gave way. With a thunderous crack, dozens of nobles crashed into the chamber below and then into the cesspit beneath. Years of accumulated human waste swallowed men whole. Some drowned, others were crushed by timbers. Chroniclers claim 60 perished, though some accounts suggest closer to 100. Miraculously, Henry himself survived, clinging to a window alcove, until rescued. The Archbishop of Mainz also survived, but the spectacle was grotesque. Armored knights, once proud, suffocated in filth. But was it an accident, the result of rotten timbers and poor maintenance, or had someone engineered the collapse to rid themselves of rivals under the cover of misfortune? The timing, the survival of key figures, and the unresolved feud all left questions. The Erfurt disaster became a macabre footnote in imperial history, yet it also served as a grim parable. Even the mighty can be brought low, not by sword or spear, but by the weight of their own excess and the stink of human waste. The dancing plague of Strasbourg, 1518. It began quietly, with a single woman. In July 1518, Frau Trophia stepped into the street of Strasbourg and began to dance. There was no music, no celebration, just a frenzied, unstoppable movement. Neighbors watched in confusion as she danced for hours, her feet blistering, her body trembling. By the next day, she was still moving. Within a week, dozens had joined her. By the month's end, more than 400 citizens were caught in a dance that seemed less joy than torment. Chroniclers describe a terrifying sight: men, women, even children, spinning and stomping, unable to rest, collapsing from exhaustion, only to rise again. Some died from heart failure, strokes, or sheer fatigue. The city council, baffled, first encouraged the dancers, believing the cure was to dance it out. They even hired musicians to provide rhythm, but the spectacle only grew deadlier. Desperation drove the council to ban public dancing, close taverns, and finally escort victims to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers and epileptics. There, priests prayed, exorcised, and urged penance. What caused this madness? Historians suggest ergot, poisoning grain infected with fungus producing hallucinogens. Others argue it was mass psychogenic illness, a form of hysteria fueled by famine, disease, and despair. Strasbourg, after all, was a city under constant strain. Poverty, plague, and fear of divine punishment weighed heavily on its people. The dancing plague faded by September, but its memory lived on as one of the strangest episodes of collective mania in human history. The miracle of Rottweil, 1643. The year was 1643. Deep into the ravages of the 30 Years' War, the city of Rottweil, in what is now southern Germany, faced siege from French and Swedish troops. Inside its walls, the people prayed for salvation. In the Dominican church, a statue of the Virgin Mary stood in quiet vigil. And then, witnesses swore, the statue's eyes began to move. Some said they rolled upward in sorrow, others that they darted toward the heavens. Her complexion, normally pale wood, flushed as if with life. The townspeople fell to their knees, convinced a miracle was at hand. Word spread, and pilgrims came to see the Virgin's gaze. 2 weeks later, on November 24th, Imperial and Bavarian forces defeated the besiegers, lifting the threat. Too many. This was proof. The Virgin had interceded. The statue became an object of veneration, its miraculous Mother of God title spreading across Catholic Europe. Skeptics abound, then and now. Was it candlelight flickering, creating the illusion of moving eyes? Was it the fervent imagination of the desperate, or was it genuine divine intervention? The episode remains etched in the history of Rottweil, where the statue is still displayed. Whether miracle or mass perception, it reveals the deep yearning of war-torn communities for signs of hope in a time of chaos. The great bullion famine of the 15th century, in an age when wealth meant silver and gold. Europe in the 15th century faced an unexpected calamity, a severe shortage of precious metals, known as the Great Bullion Famine. It was not a famine of food, but of coin. Markets faltered, trade slowed, wages were paid in kind rather than currency. Kings struggled to finance wars. Merchants hoarded what little silver remained. The very fabric of medieval economy threatened to unravel. Why did bullion vanish? Theories abound. Some argue Europe's trade with the East drained silver toward Asia, where it was prized for silk and spices. Others point to exhausted mines in Central Europe, their veins of silver running dry. Plague and war disrupted mining and transport. Hoarding and debasement of coins made matters worse. The crisis deepened around 1450, leaving governments scrambling. Relief came from new veins in Bohemia and Saxony, and later from the flood of silver across the Atlantic in the 16th century. But for decades, The bullion famine cast a shadow over Europe, feeding instability and forcing innovation in credit and finance. To this day, scholars debate whether it was a true shortage or a crisis of distribution and confidence. Either way, it was a mystery of economics, as deadly as any war. Asterisk. The Curse of Casimir IV's Tomb, 1492–1973, in the Royal Cathedral of Krakow. Beneath the soaring Gothic arches lay the sarcophagus of King Casimir IV, Jagiellon of Poland. When he died in 1492, he was mourned as a strong monarch, a ruler who had held together the Polish-Lithuanian realm through skill and diplomacy. His body was interred with pomp, sealed beneath stone for nearly 5 centuries, and then, in 1973, curiosity led scientists to disturb his rest. The team of Polish researchers opened the tomb, hoping to study the king's remains and the artistry of his burial. But within weeks, a strange pattern emerged. Several of the scientists fell ill, some fatally. Newspapers seized on the story. The king's tomb was cursed. Just as with Tutankhamun in Egypt, the idea of a royal curse gripped the imagination. How else to explain healthy men suddenly struck down after touching the grave? The truth, uncovered later, was both less supernatural and more insidious. The coffin contained not just bones but spores, deadly mold, Aspergillus flavus, producing toxins that attacked the lungs. The vault, sealed for centuries, had become a breeding ground for pathogens. Breathing in the air inside was enough to doom the unprotected. Yet the legend of the curse persists. Was it mere coincidence that the king's body had lain undisturbed for nearly 500 years, only to strike down those who defiled it? Or was it fate that his dignity, robbed by science, was avenged by invisible guardians? Even now, visitors whisper before Casimir's tomb, half in reverence, half in fear. The mystery lies not in the biology of mold, but in the enduring human need to believe that kings do not sleep lightly and that the past punishes those who pry too deeply. The legend of Rurik, founder of Russia 9th century in the year 862. The tribes of the Eastern Slavs were weary of their own quarrels. Our land is great and rich, the chronicle records them saying, but there is no order in it. Let us invite a prince who may rule over us. From across the seas came Rurik, a Varangian, perhaps a Viking. He settled at Novgorod, establishing what would become the Rurikid dynasty, the rulers of Russia for centuries. But who was Rurik? The chronicles were written centuries after the fact, blending history with myth. Some scholars identify him with Rorik of Dorestad, a Viking who raided and ruled in what is now the Netherlands and Denmark. Others insist Rurik was an invention, a convenient ancestor to legitimize the dynasty. The name itself, common among Norsemen, offers no certainty. What we do know is that by the 9th and 10th centuries, Scandinavian adventurers, the Rus, were deeply involved in Eastern Europe. They sailed the rivers, traded furs and slaves, and founded settlements that became cities. Novgorod, Kiev, whether Rurik was flesh and blood or a symbol stitched into the story afterward, his legacy shaped Russian identity. The mystery endures because nations crave origins. Was Russia born from Norse conquest, Slavic invitation, or a mixture of both? Rurik's shadow still looms in politics and culture, invoked in debates about national roots. He may have been one man, he may have been many, or he may have been none at all. Yet his name, Rurik, echoes like the first word of a long saga still unfolding. The Voynich manuscript, 15th century at first glance. It is simply a book, 240 pages of calfskin parchment, bound together, covered in illustrations of plants, astronomical charts, and naked women bathing in strange pools. But its text is the enigma. Written in an unknown script, the Voynich manuscript defies translation. Every attempt, from cryptographers of World War II to modern AI algorithms, has failed to unlock its secrets. Discovered in the early 20th century by rare book dealer Wilfrid Voynich, the manuscript was carbon dated to the early 1400s. Some believe it to be a pharmacopoeia, a medieval herbal describing plants and remedies, yet many of the plants are fantastical, unrecognizable to botanists. Others suspect it is a coded alchemical text, its drawings symbolic rather than literal. Skeptics argue it is an elaborate hoax, a medieval forgery crafted to dupe wealthy patrons. The writing has structure, resembling language, with repeating patterns and rules, but no known tongue matches it. Is it an extinct dialect, a cipher too complex for modern minds, or is it gibberish given the illusion of sense? The mystery lies not just in its content but in its persistence. For 6 centuries, it has outlasted kings and empires, taunting scholars with silence. To hold the voynich is to peer into the mind of a world we cannot reach. Whether genius or fraud, it is a reminder that not all knowledge is meant for us, and some doors, once closed, resist every key we fashion. The secret of Greek Phaeron, the restless waters of the Mediterranean. A Byzantine ship once unleashed terror. From tubes mounted on its prow burst streams of liquid flame that clung to water, flame that could not be quenched. Enemies panicked, their fleets consumed. This was Greek fire, the empire's secret weapon, first used in the 7th century and feared for centuries after. What was it? Contemporary accounts describe it as a liquid launched by siphons, igniting on contact, burning even across waves. Yet no recipe survives. The formula was so secret that it was guarded like a relic, passed from emperor to emperor, perhaps only to a few trusted chemists. When Constantinople fell in 1204, and again in 1453, the knowledge was lost forever. Theories abound. Was it a mixture of naphtha, sulfur, and quicklime? Did it include resin, oil, or saltpeter? Some experiments recreate sticky, burning liquids, but none match the legends. The Byzantines themselves claimed it was a gift from God, given to their inventor Callinicus of Helice. The terror it inspired was as important as the destruction it caused. The true formula of Greek fire remains one of history's greatest military mysteries. It was not just a weapon but a symbol of Byzantine survival, a wall of flame against enemies on every side. Its absence today is a void, a reminder that even the fiercest fire can be extinguished not by water, but by time. The Princes in the Tower 1483, in the Tower of London. 2 boys disappeared, and with them, certainty vanished too. Edward V, aged 12, and his younger brother Richard, Duke of York, were lodged there in 1483 after their father's death. Their uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, was named protector. Within weeks, he declared the boys illegitimate and seized the crown as Richard III. The princes were seen less and less, until one day they were not seen at all. Rumors spread swiftly. They had been murdered, smothered in their sleep, their bodies hidden in the tower's stones. Some accused Richard III directly, others pointed to Henry Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, or even Henry Tudor, who would later defeat Richard at Bosworth. In 1674, during renovations, workers found a box containing small bones, believed to be those of the princes. They were buried in Westminster Abbey, yet no conclusive testing has proven the identity. The bones rest in royal crypts, their silence unbroken. The disappearance of the princes is not just a crime but a political riddle. Did Richard secure his crown with blood, or were the boys spirited away, their deaths convenient for Tudor propaganda? To this day, the Tower of London holds their ghostly absence, an echo of ambition's darkest price. The curse of the Templars' Grand Master, 1314 on March 18, 1314. Jacques de Maule, last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, was led to a pyre on the Isle de la Cite in Paris. The once mighty order had been destroyed, accused of heresy, idolatry, and corruption. Most believe these charges were fabricated by King Philip IV, eager to seize Templar wealth and erase his debts. As the flames rose, de Maule spoke words that would echo down history. According to chroniclers, he declared that Pope Clement V, King Philip, and Guillaume d'Inaugurate, the king's advisor, would soon stand before God's judgment. Within a year, all 3 were dead. Clement of illness, Nagarate suddenly, Philip in a hunting accident. To contemporaries, it seemed divine vengeance, a curse called down by a dying man. The supposed curse haunted the Capetian dynasty. Within 2 generations, Philip's male line was extinct, plunging France into the chaos of the 100 Years' War. Many whispered it was the Templars' revenge, but was it coincidence, or something more? Skeptics argue that medieval chroniclers embellished demolished words after the fact, shaping them into prophecy. Others see political propaganda at work, magnifying tragedy into legend. Yet the sequence of deaths, so swift and convenient, gave fuel to centuries of belief in a Templar curse. The Knights Templar live on in popular imagination as keepers of secrets, guardians of lost treasures. The curse of Jacques de Maule remains one of their most haunting legacies, blurring the line between history and myth. The missing crown jewels of Ireland, 1907. Though not strictly medieval in time, The mystery of the Irish crown jewels is steeped in echoes of older royal intrigues. In July 1907, the regalia of the Order of St. Patrick emeralds, diamonds, and rubies valued beyond measure vanished from Dublin Castle. The jewels had been locked in a safe inside a strong room, itself within a tower. Yet when staff opened the room, the safe was empty. The theft shocked Ireland and Britain alike. Suspicion immediately fell on Sir Arthur Vickers, the official custodian, who had allowed lax security and even drunken access to the keys. Some believed it an inside job, carried out by members of Dublin's elite. Others suspected political motives. Irish nationalists, striking a symbolic blow against Crown authority. Despite extensive investigation, no culprit was ever charged, no jewels recovered. Theories multiplied, that they were smuggled abroad and sold, that British authorities covered up high-ranking involvement, or even that the jewels remain hidden in Ireland, waiting discovery. Though technically outside the Middle Ages, the crime echoes medieval tales of missing relics and cursed treasures. Like the Templar hoard or the lost regalia of Richard III, the Irish crown jewels became less about the gold itself and more about the questions left behind. Who dared steal the regalia of kings, and how did they vanish from a fortress? The silence remains unbroken. The disappearance of the Greenland Norse 15th century. For nearly 5 centuries, Norse settlers thrived on the icy edge of the world. Beginning in the late 10th century, Eric the Red and his followers carved out colonies on Greenland's fjords. They built farms, churches, and even a cathedral at God. For generations they traded walrus ivory and furs with Europe, sustaining life on the frozen frontier. Then, sometime in the 15th century, they vanished. By the 1400s, ships from Iceland found only silence, abandoned farms, empty churches, graves untended. What happened to the Greenland Norse? Climate played a role. The onset of the Little Ice Age shortened growing seasons, made seas more treacherous, and reduced pasture for cattle. Trade dwindled as Europe found new ivory sources, leaving Greenland isolated. Starvation and cold likely claimed many. Yet archaeology suggests a more complex tale. Some graves show signs of malnutrition, but not all. Some artifacts hint at conflict with the Inuit, who had arrived centuries earlier. Did cultural tensions flare into violence, or did the Norse simply fail to adapt as Inuit thrived with seal hunting and kayaks? Another theory posits migration. Perhaps the last settlers sailed back to Iceland, or even into North America, leaving no trace. The Greenland colonies were Europe's boldest medieval outpost, a fragile bridge between worlds. Their disappearance is a reminder of how human ambition collides with nature's indifference. Their churches still stand, ruins against the snow, silent monuments to a people swallowed by mystery. The Green Children of Woolpit, 12th century. In the Suffolk village of Woolpit, sometime in the 12th century, villagers discovered something extraordinary. 2 children, a boy and a girl, emerged from the earth near the village's wolf pits. Their skin was tinged green. They spoke no recognizable language, wore unfamiliar clothing, and seemed dazed by the sunlight. The villagers brought them into the community. The children refused all food until offered beans, which they ate ravenously. Slowly, they adapted to bread and more ordinary fare. Within months, the boy sickened and died. The girl survived, lost her green hue, and eventually learned English. She claimed they came from a twilight world underground, called the Land of St. Martin, where everything was dim, and all inhabitants were green. Chroniclers William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall recorded the tale, giving it credibility in the medieval imagination. Was it allegory, folklore of fairies, or a true event distorted by time? Modern theories abound. Some suggest the children were Flemish orphans, displaced by conflict and famine, their greenish skin the result of malnutrition. Others argue the tale encodes older myths of the fairy folk, glimpsed in an age when pagan memory lingered. The most daring theories see it as evidence of a parallel world, a folk memory of subterranean life. Whatever their origin, the Green Children of Woolpit remain a medieval riddle. Were they refugees, fey visitors, or symbols of outsiders absorbed into English life? The truth, like the twilight land they described, remains in shadow. The Ghost Army of Helaik, 373 BC. Remembered in the Middle Ages, though its destruction predated the Middle Ages. The story of Helaik haunted medieval chronicles as if it were yesterday. In 373 BC, the Greek city of Helaik was swallowed by the sea after an earthquake. Ancient accounts spoke of a wave so vast it erased the city overnight. Fishermen later claimed to see its ruins beneath the waters, temples glimmering through the waves. By the medieval period, the legend had transformed. Sailors whispered that the ghosts of Helek guarded their drowned city. Strange lights flickered above the waters, said to be the torches of spirits. Fishermen claimed nets snagged on submerged columns, and some swore they heard bells tolling from the deep. Medieval monks who read Greek texts passed the tale along, presenting Helek as a cautionary story of divine punishment. Some connected it to the lost city of Atlantis. Others believed it was a warning against hubris, an entire city drowned because of arrogance before the gods. Modern archaeology has indeed uncovered Helek beneath the Gulf of Corinth. Its ruins confirm sudden destruction by earthquake and tsunami. Yet the medieval version lives on, a ghost city beneath the waves, glimpsed only by those doomed to join it. Helek became not only a Greek tragedy, but a European medieval mystery, a vanished world reminding men that stone and power can vanish overnight into the sea. Asterisk. The Man in the Iron Mask, 17th century, retold as a medieval-style mystery in the prisons of Louis XIV lay, a man whose identity was so dangerous it had to be hidden forever. His face was concealed by a masked popular imagination, later made it iron, though records suggest black velvet. He was held for decades, shuttled between fortresses, until his death in 1703 at the Bastille, though not medieval. The mystery fit neatly into medieval traditions of hidden kings and secret heirs. Who was the masked prisoner? Some claimed he was an older brother of Louis XIV, hidden to secure the succession. Others said he was the king's illegitimate twin. Voltaire insisted on the twin theory, popularizing it across Europe. Prison records confirm his existence, but his crime remains unrecorded. Was he a disgraced noble, a political conspirator silenced, or simply a symbol onto which the age projected its fears of secrecy and tyranny? The tale, medieval in spirit, endured because it captured the essence of forbidden knowledge. The mask was more than iron, it was the barrier between truth and power. Even today, historians cannot identify him with certainty. The mystery is not who he was, but why his face alone was deemed more dangerous than rebellion itself. Asterisk. The Devil's Footprints, 1855. Echoing medieval superstition on a snowy February night in 1855, residents of Devon awoke to find a trail of strange footprints stretching across the countryside. The prints were cloven, resembling a hoof, and extended for nearly 100 miles across fields, rivers, and even rooftops. No ordinary animal could have made them. Villagers whispered the devil had walked among them, though this occurred in the 19th century. The interpretation was deeply medieval. Tales of demonic visits, witches and fae left their mark on the people's imagination. Priests warned of omens. Skeptics scrambled for explanations. Some suggested badgers or kangaroos escaped from private menageries. Others blamed atmospheric phenomena. None accounted for the sheer distance or the uncanny precision of the prints. To this day, no explanation satisfies. The footprints vanished with the snow, leaving behind only drawings and terrified recollections. They remain a living mystery, part folklore, part forensic puzzle. Medieval Europe would have called it a sign from God or the devil. Modern minds still cannot agree. The devil's footprints belong to both worlds. A reminder that some mysteries refuse to be confined by time. The tomb of Genghis Khan, 13th century. In 1227, Genghis Khan, conqueror of half the known world, died during campaign in China. His burial was conducted in absolute secrecy. Chroniclers wrote that his body was returned to Mongolia, guarded by soldiers who slaughtered anyone who saw the procession. A river was diverted to cover his grave, and those who dug it were killed to ensure silence. Where lies the tomb of Genghis Khan? Despite centuries of searching, no one knows. Mongolian tradition holds that the secret must remain. Disturbing his grave would unleash his spirit. Even today, Mongolians resist excavation of sites believed to contain his resting place. Theories abound that his body lies near the Annan River, in the sacred Khenti Mountains, or beneath Burkhan Khaldun, where no archaeologist is permitted to dig. Others believe it was lost entirely, his remains consumed by time and the earth. The mystery endures because it is bound to reverence. Genghis Khan's grave is not merely missing, it is protected by myth, faith, and fear. Unlike Tutankhamun or Charlemagne, his tomb is not to be found. His empire stretched from the Pacific to the Caspian. yet he chose silence in death. The missing tomb of Genghis Khan remains one of history's greatest enigmas, the final unsolved riddle of a man who once seemed unstoppable. Asterisk. The legend of Prester John in the 12th century. As crusaders bled in the Holy Land and kings schemed across Europe, a letter began to circulate. It was addressed to the Byzantine emperor and the Pope, and it came from a man calling himself Prester John, priest and king of a mighty Christian realm far to the east. His kingdom, the letter claimed, overflowed with richest rivers of gems, mountains of gold, and creatures both wondrous and strange. Prester John ruled over a land where no sin could flourish, where justice reigned, and where Christians lived free of fear from the Muslim powers pressing on Europe. The letter was a sensation. Europe was desperate for allies against Islam, and the idea that a powerful Christian monarch ruled somewhere in Asia fired the imagination. Maps began to mark his realm in India. Later, as geographic knowledge expanded, it shifted to Ethiopia. Missionaries and envoys were dispatched, convinced they might find this hidden paradise. Marco Polo himself heard of Prester John in his travels, and for centuries explorers sought him across deserts and mountains. But Prester John was never found. Was he an invention, a forgery crafted to inspire crusaders and give hope to the faithful? Some argue the letter may have originated from Nestorian Christians in Asia, trying to rally support. Others see it as propaganda, a medieval hoax that outlived its authors. Yet its power was undeniable. Entire expeditions were launched in his name, blending myth and exploration. Prester John never rode to Europe's aid, but his legend endured for nearly 500 years. The mystery lies not only in his absence but in how desperately people wanted him to be Allah, phantom ally conjured by faith and fear, shaping history without ever existing. Asterisk. The Holy Grail. Among the legends of King Arthur, none shines brighter or more elusive than the Holy Grail. In the romances of the 12th century, it is described as a cup or vessel of miraculous power, used by Christ at the Last Supper and later catching his blood at the crucifixion. To possess it meant eternal grace, divine favor, perhaps even immortality. Knights rode out on quests, not for land or wealth, but for the Grail. Their journeys told in poems and songs across medieval Europe. But where was the Grail? Was it ever real? Churches in Spain, England, and Italy claimed to have it, each chalice presented with solemnity, each venerated by pilgrims. Yet no single relic convinced the world. Scholars argue the Grail was never meant to be literal. It was an allegory of divine mystery, transformed by storytellers into an object of desire. Others insist it may have been inspired by real relics, perhaps an early communion chalice, elevated into myth. That the Grail's allure lay in its ambiguity. For the faithful, it was a symbol of the ultimate quest, purity of heart, closeness to God. For kings and crusaders, it was a promise of divine legitimacy. Even today, the Grail haunts popular imagination, from esoteric orders to novels and films. Whether a cup, a stone, or merely a metaphor, the Holy Grail remains unsolved because it is unsolvable. It was never about finding an object. It was about the search itself, about the longing for something beyond mortal grasp, and in that longing, it became eternal. The death of Joan of Arc, 1431. The girl from Domremy was only 19 when flames claimed her, yet Joan of Arc had already changed the fate of France. She claimed visions from saints led her to drive out the English. She lifted the siege of Orleans, escorted Charles VII to his coronation, and became a symbol of divine favor. But when captured by the Burgundians in 1430, she was sold to the English. At Rouen, she faced trial for heresy. The proceedings were a travesty. Biased judges, political motives, relentless interrogation. Joan stood firm, refusing to betray her visions. On May 30, 1431, she was led to the stake. Witnesses saw her pray, then cry out as the fire rose. When the flames died, her heart was said to be intact, her ashes cast into the Seine. Yet doubts lingered. Some claimed a substitute had died in her place, that Joan escaped into obscurity. In the decades after her death, impostors appeared, claiming to be the maid returned. Even centuries later, skeptics wondered, was the execution truly as reported, or had the English fabricated a martyr? The mystery lies less in whether Joan perished. Most evidence supports that she did, but in how her death was remembered. Her execution turned her from rebel to saint. The English sought to erase her, yet they immortalized her instead. Canonized in 1920, she remains one of history's most enigmatic figures, a peasant girl who defied armies, a visionary whose end is both known and contested, forever caught between history and legend. The lost tomb of Attila the Hun 453. When Attila the Hun died suddenly, in 453 on his wedding night, some said, from a burst blood vessel, the terror of Europe was gone, but his burial was as mysterious as his life was fierce. Chroniclers wrote that his body was placed in 3 coffins, iron, silver, and gold. His warriors diverted a river, burying him beneath its bed so no enemy could desecrate him. Then, to protect the secret, they slaughtered the slaves who performed the burial. Where is Attila's grave? Centuries of searching have revealed nothing. Rivers shift, floods arise, and landscapes change, but no trace of the golden tomb has ever surfaced. Some point to the Tisa River in Hungary, others to the Danube. Archaeologists dig, but only legends rise. The mystery is heightened by Attila's reputation. To Romans he was the scourge of God. To Huns he was a unifier, a conqueror. His burial, hidden and violent, reflects both fear and reverence. Did his people truly dam a river, or was that embellishment meant to awe enemies? The silence of the earth keeps the answer. Attila's missing tomb is more than a lost grave. It is a symbol of impermanence. Even the mightiest can vanish without a trace. The golden coffin lies somewhere in the soil of Europe, a treasure hidden by time and secrecy, daring us to find it. The lost treasure of the Knights Templar 1307 on a single night in 1307. Across France, the Templars were seized. Once the guardians of pilgrims and the bankers of kings, the Knights Templar had grown too powerful. King Philip IV, deep in debt to them, struck. With the Pope's support, he arrested them, accused them of heresy, and dismantled their order. Grand Master Jacques de Molay was burned at the stake. But what of their wealth? The Templars controlled vast lands, fleets, and treasure. Yet when Philip's men stormed their commanderies, much was missing. Rumors spread of wagons leaving Paris by night, laden with gold. Some said the treasure was carried to Scotland, hidden with allies who defied the Pope. Others claimed it was spirited to Portugal, where the order transformed into the Knights of Christ. Still others believe it sank beneath the Seine or lies beneath the ruins of Temple Mount in Jerusalem. The mystery of the Templar treasure has fueled centuries of speculation, inspiring legends from the Holy Grail to secret societies. Perhaps the treasure was never as vast as imagined, its wealth tied up in land rather than gold. But the absence of proof feeds the myth that the Templars were extinguished. But their treasure endures in stories, in conspiracies, in the imagination of every seeker of hidden gold. Whether buried in vaults, sunk in rivers, or never real at all, it remains one of history's most tantalizing mysteries. The Princes in the Tower 1483. In the summer of 1483, 2 boys vanished from the world stage. They were Edward V of England, aged 12, and his younger brother Richard of Shrewsbury, Duke of York. Together, they were heirs to the throne of England, sons of the late King Edward IV, and the focus of a kingdom's hopes. Yet by autumn, they were gone, swallowed by the walls of the Tower of London. When Edward IV died in April, his eldest son should have ascended. But at only 12, Edward was too young to rule alone. His uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, was appointed Lord Protector. The boy king and his brother were lodged in the Tower ostensibly for safety before Edward's coronation. But the coronation never came. In June, Parliament declared the boys illegitimate, and their uncle became King Richard III. The princes were last seen playing in the Tower Gardens that summer. By autumn, witnesses spoke in hushed tones that they were no more. Theories abounded. Richard III had them smothered to secure his throne. The Duke of Buckingham, ambitious and treacherous, acted on his own. Or Henry Tudor later, Henry VII, had them quietly slain after seizing power in 1485. Bones discovered in the Tower in 1674, hidden under a staircase, reignited speculation. They were reburied at Westminster Abbey, yet modern science has not confirmed their identity. Were they victims of royal ambition, or spirited away in secret? The mystery endures because it strikes at the heart of power. England's throne may have been bought with the lives of 2 children. The silence of the Tower's stones holds a secret no king can fully erase. The Voynich manuscript in a library at Yale sits a book that has baffled scholars for centuries. Roughly 240 pages, bound in calfskin, filled with drawings of strange plants, naked women in baths, astrological charts, and a script no one can read. This is the Voynich manuscript, named for the Polish bookseller Wilfrid Voynich, who purchased it in 1912, but its origins stretch far earlier, possibly to the early 15th century. The writing is unlike any known language, neither Latin, Greek, nor Arabic. It flows smoothly, as if meaningful, with repeated patterns that suggest structure. Yet no codebreaker, not even the experts at Bletchley Park during World War II, has cracked it. Some think it is a cipher, concealing secret alchemical knowledge. Others believe it is a hoax, an elaborate forgery designed to deceive a wealthy patron. The illustrations only deepen the enigma. Plants appear that resemble none on Earth. Diagrams suggest astronomy or medicine, yet are unlike any tradition. The bathing women float in green pools linked by pipes, as though the book described some lost science of health and fertility. Carbon dating places the parchment in the early 1400s, eliminating later forgery theories. Yet who wrote it and why remains obscure. Was it the work of a medieval genius, encoding discoveries beyond his age, or the whimsical imagination of an artist? The Voynich manuscript whispers across centuries. It promises a key to knowledge, then denies it. Until its script yields, it will remain the world's most beautiful, maddening puzzle. Asterisk.